I'm Kurt Antonias. I'm the owner of this Nordhaven 35, hull number 22. And for many years, I've been trying to get a very special guy on this boat and a good friend of mine, Jeff Merrill. Now, Jeff sold me my first Nordhaven 43, which we had for 10 years and put 20,000 miles on it. And now I'm in this wonderful 35. And I want to ask Jeff a bunch of questions about the 35 and why he did this and why he did that. And we might even do a walk around as well. So Jeff, first of all, how many Nordhavens have you sold in your life?
I'd probably have to go back a little bit, but I would say it's got to be close to 100, if not over 100. But that's over 22 years. I started with Nordhaven in 1999. And was tasked with being the project manager for the Nordhaven 35. So this was my introduction to Nordhaven. I did that for several years, and when the 35 project sort of slowed down, the guys at PA asked me to get involved in full line sales. So I was doing new boats and used boats. And that lasted up until 2014, and then I started my own yacht brokerage. So,
yeah.
But I've still continued to sell used Nordhavens as GMYS.
And he's such a huge success story. It's just wonderful to know such a successful guy. All right, Jeff. Nordhaven had a long history of doing full displacement boats. Right. And all of a sudden, they did the Nordhaven 35, which is a semi-displacement boat.
Right.
Can you give me the thinking behind
that?
Yeah,
I think any good company that owns a market, like Nordhaven really has owned the full displacement market, looks at what else they can do to expand their reach, and they really felt that even though there's a lot of competition in the semi-displacement market, they knew how to build a good boat. Jeff Leishman has such a brilliant eye. The engineering systems are so superb that they wanted to go after the semi-displacement market and start off with a small one and then do some bigger ones and have a line of semi-displacement Nordhavens, which we called the Coastal Pilots, that would be equivalent to the full displacement line. So the plan was, let's do another line of boats.
Oh, interesting. What do you think is your biggest challenge as project manager on this boat?
Well, I didn't have a lot of powerboat background. I grew up racing sailboats. I was at Pacific Seacraft Cruising Sailboat Builder. When I met the guys from Nordhaven, they came up to have Pacific Seacraft build the Nordhaven 40. And I remember being intrigued by a powerboat that can cross oceans. I'd never heard of that because I was just focused in the sailing world. And I did call Jim Leishman up one day, who I'd met just coming by the factory in Fullerton. I said, hey, I'd like to come down someday and have you show me what these Nordhavens, I probably even said Nordhaven, are all about. And so Jim was really kind. He took me through several boats, and I just remember being blown away with the quality and the size. And that's probably when my thinking started turning to, I understand the powerboat thing. Now, Pacific Seacraft was building our own 38T fast trawler. So as a sailboat builder, and many sailboat builders did this, Sabre did fantastic sailboats, but now you know them for their current line of trawlers and fast boats. But Freedom did the Legacies. All the sailboat builders were coming in and building a powerboat. So because their sailors were aging and wanted to stay on the water and still be comfortable. So we were building the 38T, and I was working on that. Don Coleman, who was the president of Pacific Seacraft and is now a Nordhaven guy and has been for many, many years, took on the Nordhaven 40 project. I was doing the 38T. But then just my normal curiosity, enticed me to call Jim. And then I went down there, and then all of a sudden it all started falling into place. But I was still a sailor, had no interest in Nordhaven. I just wanted to know what they were about. So anyway, that's my background.
Interesting. My first boat, my first exposure to PAE was the Nordhaven 43. And
the Mason 43.
I'm sorry, the Mason 43.
Yeah, no, and the same type of thing. They were doing the Masons, then they came up with the Nordhaven.
And the Mason, I bought the Mason 43, and I was so impressed with it. And I had it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was so blown away with the thinking that went into that boat by PAE and Jim Leishman. And so when the 46 came out, I was just drooling over it because I was kind of ready for a change anyway.
It was such a distinctive look. The 46,
and it broke barriers, that boat, and the distance it could go, and the construction. And I looked at that 46 and I wanted it so bad, but it was just kind of out of my price range.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the 46 when it first came out was kind of neither fish nor fowl. Jim Leishman and Dan Streech and Joe Meglin, and Jeff Leishman was coming on then, were the owners of the business, and they were getting tired of cruising on the Mason sailboats, long distances, heeled over, wearing their foul weather gear, outside of the night in the cold, and Jim read Voyaging Under Power, Beebe's book, and that was changed his thinking on, we're a boat builder, we're building sailboats, how many Masons are we going to build? And he really presented a flyer to his partners and said, I think we should do a long-range power boat. And it was a huge roll of the dice. I mean, look back now, hindsight, best move that Nordhaven ever did, or PAE as they're known, Pacific Asian Enterprises. But it was not without a lot of consternation and a lot of, oh my God, what have I done?
They took some big risks. They took some big
hits. Took a while for it to take off.
It's interesting, my Mason 43 and this Nordhaven 35 were both built by the Tashing Yard.
Yeah.
In fact, they were built very close to the same time in the Tashing Yard.
Interesting, yeah.
So what's your favorite aspect of the 35? If you had to pick one thing that you just think is the coolest, most impressive thing.
You know what? It was really fun being involved in the project. Jim hired me and said, I need someone to be a project manager for this boat. And I had been the vice president of sales and marketing at Pacific Seacraft, so I was doing all the boats and all the dealers and coordinating that together. So to come over to their company and be building a power boat and being responsible for it was really fun. It was great to be, he said, look, we've got the design, but we need to figure out what windlass to put on there, what's included as standard equipment, how to lay it out, and really had pretty much an open checkbook, but I had to stay within certain prices so we could afford to sell them and make a little bit of money. And so I really went through every single, a 35-foot boat seems big, but it's pretty small. You can get down to every single aspect of it. One of the cool features, and I had some very good partners at the Dashing Yard in Tainan, Taiwan, and they would say, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Some examples, and I don't know if I can come up with the coolest, but a few things were in the galley. They said, do you want a stainless steel backing on the forward bulkhead so that it'll reflect more and feel like a more open. Well, how much is that? $50 or something. Yeah, do it. So I was do it. And of course, the prices kept edging up. I think that makes the whole galley work down there. That's great.
Yeah.
And then the utility
very
things,
cool feature.
When you go down the stairs, there's a big pantry locker, which is also exactly sized for a washer dryer. So if the original owner wanted a laundry, they could put it there, it would fit. Or if a later owner wanted to add one, they could do it. But that cabinet was sized to either be a pantry locker with shelves or a combination washer dryer. So the utility of things was pretty fun. I think one of the hidden features, and you probably know about this, but not everybody does, is Al, who was my cohort at Dashing, said, do you want a limber hole chain? And I said, okay, I know what limber holes are. There's these little slots down in the bilge that lets water go from chamber to chamber, and the little tubes that go through are called limber holes. And I said, Al, I don't know what a limber chain is. And so he explained it to me. So there's a shock cord up forward. There's a bunch of chain that runs through these tubes of the limber holes. And there's a handle down in your engine room. And if you pull on that handle, you get resistance of the chain going through the limber holes, and it knocks out any crud that's in there. So, $50 or whatever the price was. So yeah, we want to do that. I don't think any other Nordhavens have it. I got a little bit crazy on adding the things, but that's another example. Did you know what that was?
Well, yes, I finally figured it out, but I figured maybe the previous owner, who was a very meticulous guy and took great care of this boat, I thought maybe he had added that, and I never really pulled on it hard because I was.
Well, and by now, how old is this boat? 20 years old now?
Yeah.
So the bungee might be
dead.
Yeah.
But I did pull on a little bit, and I figured, oh, sure, it's to clear out the limber hole, and that was a limber hole that was very inaccessible.
Right. So I mean, it's a smart thing. Do you need it? No. Is it cool? Absolutely.
That's typical of Nordhaven, thinking of these little things to add to the boat, to refine on the boat, to change on the boat.
We had a little splash rail on the bow because water was climbing up a little bit, and that knocked that off. I think the best feature of the boat, it's not one feature, but was the design criteria or parameter was this has to be an ideal boat for two people. So it needs to be single-handed. It needs to have everything that two people would need, including the ability to have guests over for a night or something like that, have cocktails and dinner. But it was every decision, if there was a choice, is this better for two people or more? I would answer it for what was best for two people. But
Well,
the quality, the fit and finish, unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And you nailed it. If you ask me the favorite aspect of this boat, number one, I would say I have never owned a boat that gets more compliments than this boat. It is when I'm out of Catalina, it's a parade of boats that come up and go, God, what kind of boat is this? What a cool design. And a lot of people beg me for a tour of the boat.
Yeah.
And so the design is really magnificent.
It's an eye catcher. Jeff Leishman is just brilliant on his
He
designs.
is. And I think it's really interesting that the new Nordhaven 41 looks very, very similar to this 35.
It's a next generation kind of look. Yeah. Well,
and the other thing that I love about this boat, and you mentioned it, is the single hanging feature. I take this boat to Catalina all the time by myself.
By yourself, yeah.
And because I buddy boat and I meet friends out there and I take it by myself. I pick up a mooring by myself, and it's a perfect one or two person boat and an occasional third person.
Well, one of the best things about Pacific Asian Enterprises Nordhaven is that they have excellent owners out using them, and they listen to the owner feedback, and they do spend a lot of time with people on the boats. I did a lot of training and times on the 35, and it's one thing to know how to build it, but it's another thing to use it and see how it works. And there's two big differences there. For example, on the anchor roller, you got the roller right here. When the anchor comes up, it starts going, it gets up to a certain point where the angle to the gypsy gets up so high it'll strip all the chain down. And I had that happen to me. I was bringing up the anchor nice and slow. It got up right here, and then all of a sudden it was at an angle where the chain stripped off the gypsy and all the chain went back down.
Oh my gosh.
So we added a hoop in front of the windlass so that the chain angle was always feeding directly into the gypsy. So you know that little hoop? That was not on the first boat. So we added that later.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
And I guess my point is, they are always improving, always listening, always making them better. This is hull 22.
Second to last
second,
one.
Yeah, so
second to last one built.
All of the good thinking had been done by the time this boat was built.
I'm so lucky to have.
But I mean, hull number 3 was better than hull number 1, and hull 7. They're always making them better.
Yeah. I noticed you talk about hardware on the boat. The hardware on this boat is so heavy duty. I swear you took cleats off a Nordhaven 62 and just bolted them on this boat.
Well, you're right, and here's the thinking is, and
I
this
am
was
right?
Yeah, you're right. So the Dashing Yard was building the 57 and the 62. The 35 was their next Nordhaven project, and they had all this heavy hardware for these ocean crossing long range cruisers, the 57 and the 62. So they put cleats on, and when I went over to look at them the first time, I thought, whoa, these are pretty substantial. They're great, they're fabulous, they're overbuilt like most Nordhavens are, but they added weight. And the one thing that slowed the momentum down on this project was that the yard built the boat too heavy. They built it too good. Everything was super heavy. There was a big anchor on it. There was a lot of chain on it. One of the choices I had is, how much fuel tankage do you want to get? And I maximized the amount of fuel tankage. Of course, you have a fuel tank, what do? You fill it up. You fill it up, it's heavy, the boats don't go as fast. I was thinking that if someone wanted to go to the Bahamas for 2 months, they'd fill it up and they would just cruise over there and go slow. But everybody would fill up their tanks and then punch it and not be able to get those high numbers. If you're going to go port to port, you'd fill it up a third of the way so you know what your burn is, so you arrive in there with plenty in reserve, but then you add enough for the next leg as opposed to just filling it up. So I mean, I learned how people think too. I gave them the option, but they didn't think the way I did on how they used it.
Well, this boat carries 600 gallons of fuel, or almost 600 gallons of fuel, just shy of that. And that would give this boat a range to go down from Los Angeles to Cabo San Lucas, and actually back, depending on your speed.
Well, I mean, we get back to the semi-displacement.
But if I go 12 knots, and I can't get 14 knots out of this, but I can get a 12 knots.
Yeah.
And the boat, flattens right out, and it's quite smooth.
It's a
and,
really sweet ride. It just never
but
got the
it burns
high...
a lot of fuel at 12 knots.
Yeah.
The only thing that I wish you had as an option on this boat, and it was at a time period when they weren't readily available on smaller vessels, was
stabilization, flopper stoppers or something?
hydraulic stabilizers.
Active fins.
Active fins. Thank you.
The thinking was it's a fast boat. They're not hard chines; they're soft chines. That the speed would give it natural stability.
And it does.
It does.
And
But we looked into possibly doing paravane outriggers off the mast, but we were worried about the loads on there because you get a lot of forces up, down, around, and it was really designed as a semi-displacement boat. A stabilization shouldn't have been necessary, and so I don't think any of the boats ever added stabilization.
No. If I had $12,000 or $15,000 just laying around the house, I might try putting a seakeeper on this boat, because there's
they weren't available.
No, they didn't exist.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of room
it's a good
in
size
the
lazarette. The space
and
on
you
this
could just drop a seakeeper right down in there. But
I don't think you need it.
I don't think you need it. You know, I get chintzy with the fuel.
Well, you could, because you have a mast and boom, you could take the boom out and you could then have a good, topping lift on it, and you could suspend a single flopper stopper for at rest. Just when you're
I have a great flopper stopper.
And you can hang it off the hull, but you could also get a little more
I
leverage.
put in a magma flopper stopper pole, and it works great.
You know that I was involved in developing the magma flopper stopper too, did you?
No.
Yeah, well, that's another previous career. Yeah.
Well, I've taken enough of your time, and separately we're going to do a walkthrough of this boat.
Yeah, I'll show you some of the
things.
that we did.
Thanks so much for sitting down, and you're such a great friend. I mean,
well, this is really fun. It's been a long time.
So we've been talking about this for so long.
And I did get a chance to go through. I'm kind of an accumulator. It's beyond a collector, and hopefully not as bad as a hoarder. But I did save a lot of Nordhaven 35 stuff. So I brought you a package.
Ooh.
That was the brochure. This was one of the articles about it. The speed range. Nordhaven's, before the internet, before the web, their brochures were absolutely the best in the market. And so this is the original full line brochure, and then there's more. There's the specs and the options pricing and drawings. All that stuff is in here.
Interesting.
So the 35, I'll pull this one. This was the full line card now. I think they're up to, they're close to 20 models now. The Nordhaven 46 was first, and then they did the 62, and then they did the 50 and the 57 simultaneously at the same time. And then they did the Nordhaven 40, which Pacific Seacraft did, and that's where I met them. And then I came on to do the number 6, the 35. So this is an old full line. Now if you get a full line brochure, it's a fold out deal. Yeah.
There's such a success story, and I've got to say, I'm a walking advertisement for Nordhaven, because the guys that own Nordhaven are the same guys that owned it when they were selling Mason sailboats, and they're easily accessible. They're kind, brilliant men. The people that work for the company are great people, and I just can't say enough about that company. It's a wonderful, wonderful success story.
Yeah.
And the fact that they haven't sold out to a big corporation, and it's just still the original group of guys essentially that are running the company and owning the company. I think that just makes me proud to own a Nordhaven.
Yeah, and I think everybody who owns one is proud to own it, and the company is proud of the boats they build, and the employees all get it. Everyone. It's a team effort, and it just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
All right.
Kurt,
thank you.
Thanks so much.
Fun seeing you, and here, this is all your stuff.
Oh, you're giving me
I'm giving that to you.
Oh, I thought you were just showing it to me.
No, that's for you.
Wow.
There'll be a test.
Thank
you already passed the test. You bought the boat. So.